has served the community for 40 years, and we are going to take a look back at where it all began, where it is today, and where it hopes to go in the years to come. One community leader remembers vividly how El Centro got its start. Esther Valladolid Wolf was a graduate student at the University of Kansas School of Social Work. She was assigned to do research in the Argentine and Silver City neighborhoods of Kansas City, Kansas. She soon realized that the Mexican-American community was underserved by many local social service agencies.
Because I was doing graduate work at the School of Social Work in Lawrence, and one of my professors was Elvira Ramirez, and she was a professor, and her interest was in Argentine and in the Hispanic community and what they were doing. And so she recruited me to go down and do a census of the Hispanic groups. And Hispanic families in Silver City and some of those areas down in the Mexican area.
In the 1960s, Father Ramon Gaitan, who was originally from San Antonio, Texas, had been a parish priest at Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church and later served at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Both were located in the heart of Kansas City, Missouri's Latino community known as the West Side. In the 1970s, he was assigned to Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in Topeka, Kansas.
And they were having, in Topeka, Kansas, they were having some problems with the university students in terms of the Chicano movement, and they didn't know what to do. So they asked me if, to accept one of two places. One was Kansas City, Missouri again, or Topeka, and I accepted Topeka.
It was there that he was asked by Archbishop Ignatius J. Strecker to assist with the Mexican-American community. Father Gaitan established El Centro in Topeka, and he later wanted those same services to be offered to families in Kansas City, Kansas.
And at that time, there was a movement in the Catholic Church. It was El Primer Encuentro Hispano de Pastoral. And really, they were talking about, in this particular movement, a need for more Hispanic priests, for more Hispanic nuns, especially Hispanic bishops and archbishops. And the only bishop at that time was Bishop Flores. They were trying to find leadership in Kansas, and I'm talking about the United States Catholic Conference, the division for the Spanish-speaking, who was actually organizing the Encuentro nationwide. How they found me, I don't know, but they found me. And they asked me if I would get involved in this movement and invited me to Houston. And Houston was an offset of the Primer Encuentro. It was a follow-up. They started doing regional conferences. That's where I first met Bishop Flores at that time. And that's when I really began to understand more about this movement, because, you know, we Hispanics think of the Catholic Church in terms of going to Mass, making our donation, receiving the sacraments, and because Hispanics are just very religious and faithful people, faithful to their faith. Well, then I started learning we can't look at church in that way. Look at it in that way, but let's look beyond that. Let's look at the church in terms of grade schools, high schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, land, wealth, things that they're really not sharing with us. Let's look at decision-making, policy-making. We're not a part of that, not even at the parish level. And so that began to really give me an understanding of what that movement was about. It wasn't just about more bishops, but let's get the church to understand our needs as well and respond to those needs.
Discrimination and segregation gave birth to El Centro. Other agencies were not meeting the needs of Hispanics in Kansas City. With a one-time grant from the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, the blessing of Archbishop Ignatius J. Strecker, and the commitment of the Cordi Marian Sisters, a group of energetic community members formed El Centro de Servicios para Hispanos. In 1976, El Centro was the little sister to the larger outreach agency already operating in Topeka.
From there, we went to Armadale in Kansas City, Kansas, and so I went to see the Archbishop, and I had made an outline, a very short outline, of what I thought would be a good start, and just so that the bishop would know, see it and see what he said, but he didn't want to see it. He said, no, you do what you have to do, and if I don't like it, I'll let you know. I said, okay. So we got started. I think, if I remember rightly, we started with like $9,000 that he allowed us, and so I was still in Topeka, so I kept commuting back and forth. I brought some more sisters from San Antonio, young sisters, to help me with migrant work and also with prison ministry. There was some attempt to do something like that already in Kansas City, but it wasn't working out. So then we took it over.
Through a partnership with SER Jobs for Progress, El Centro worked with migrant farm workers in Wyandotte and Johnson counties during the summers, offering outreach, counseling, and other social services. This began a relationship with migrant families in the Kansas City area that has lasted for many years. With the guidance of its first board of directors and the able leadership of Richard Reese, El Centro Inc. became an exemplary community organization. One person who was instrumental in starting El Centro in Kansas City was the late Lupe M. Gonzalez, who was a well-known orchestra leader and community activist. He supported Richard Reese in organizing a new agency that would meet the underserved Mexican American and other Latino communities of Kansas City, Kansas.
You asked how we get involved in volunteering. I think as human beings, we all come from different environments and have different expectations of things around you and around your community. And there are times when people ask you if you would help in an event or in a cause or in a situation. Some take a long time, some are what they refer to as ad hoc, a short period of assistance that they need. And I think if you are the kind of person to feel that you're comfortable in doing that, then you participate.
Lupe was always a leader. From his family leadership responsibility, being a leader of a large orchestra, very difficult to do, especially when you have musicians who work all week long. And during the weekend, they kind of want to let loose too. And yet he, as a leader of a group, needs to keep that group together to perform and provide the entertainment. And those leadership skills helped him, as they helped me later on in life, to then get more and more involved in our community and get involved in numerous issues.
I worked for Lupe. I was in charge of training. So I was able to put many of our community members into a good training that would result into good jobs. And jobs was key for us. I mean, that was the purpose of SER. And again, you know, you become aware of more issues, you become aware of more injustices, you become aware of more political issues and policy that put up barriers for the Hispanic community. And so it was just another experience to gain more knowledge.
Lupi became president of SARE, Jobs for Progress, because of his leadership ability and his common sense approach to managing people. An agency that did so much good for this community, but it was politically funded and it was sole source funding. So when the politicians decided to pull the funds, the whole agency, of course, came tumbling down. But one of the things I learned in that whole experience was, don't put your eggs in one basket. We needed an organization that had multi-funding sources.
With many unmet needs among the Latino community identified, El Centro was launched in 1976 with Richard Reese at the helm.
I got to meet the Archbishop of Kansas City in Kansas, and he had already started El Centro in Topeka with Father Ramon, okay? Topeka was already going. I'm here working in the community. There's a couple of things happening in this community, in our community in Kansas City, Kansas. One, we had an agency that was called ARA, Argentine Rosedale Armadale. They focused on community issues of the Hispanic community. There was another organization called Deposito at that time. Deposito was sort of an employment outreach organization. And then later came SARE. The issue was they were all funded by one entity. So Kansas University, through funds, controlled actually ARA. The War on Poverty, through Economic Opportunity Foundation, controlled Deposito. And the city, through MDTA funds and CEDA funds, controlled SARE. So whenever they didn't like what those organizations were doing, they turned off the water. You see, politically, we had nothing. Well, they turned off the water of SARE. They had already turned off the water of the other two. We had nothing. But I knew that the Archbishop wanted to do something in Kansas City. And so the best thing was, let's create an El Centro, like in Topeka, in Kansas City. And so some community members like Linda Mata, myself, Father Raymond, and a couple of others who have left the area and have been gone for a long time, got together and we approached the Archbishop and asked him if he would help us in setting up an El Centro in Kansas City, Kansas. We had a director before, even Sister Teresa. Now, there was a strategy going into this thing. And the strategy was, we have to be a multi-funded organization. We can't just allow one government or one foundation or one something fund the operation, because we'll end up like the other organizations. And I felt that we needed, for a strong foundation, the church and United Way. And then we could blossom from there. And that's what happened. And so we had a couple of presidents, and then I was asked to serve, not presidents, but executive directors. I was asked to serve, and I just kept chipping away at more and more different types of funding, so that no one could control our destiny. If somebody wanted to turn the water off, let them. We could still keep going.
John Mendez became the first chairman of the board of directors.
Richard and I have always worked in the community, sometimes doing different things, but we knew what we needed to do. We came together to try to maintain our wits together, and others finally joined us, and Richard and I, just one day, I was down in El Centro, we talked about, what are we going to do? We need to do something more than just what we're doing. We need to make sure that we have a stabilizing force, meaning money. And what else we needed to do, we talked about, one step at a time. And we finally were able to go out and try to find some funding for El Centro. And there were not a lot of funding out there, Gene, believe me, or at least they didn't want to give it to us. And however, we knew what we needed to do. Archbishop Strecker, good man, and he knew what needed to be done, but he knew he couldn't do it. First of all, he couldn't speak Spanish, and if we wanted to learn Spanish, Mom had worked hard to teach us Spanish, me and my family, and we needed to undertake whatever the board wanted us to, not the board, but whatever needed to be done to move us forward and to set up guidelines for a good structure and good commitment by all of us, not just Richard and I, but we wanted women involved in this because they were a stabilizing force.
Sister Matilda Jaime joined El Centro staff in 1978 and developed programs to meet the needs of the Latino community.
And in 1978, I went to Kansas City, assigned only for the summer to help. During the summer, the teachers used to be assigned to mission houses. And so I was assigned to go help with the migrant workers in Kansas City for the summer. At that time, one of our sisters' mother got very sick, and she went to stay with her temporarily, so they asked me to stay on. And that's when I met Richard, and the whole gamut began.
Oh, yeah.
I knew when I got there and when I was leaving to go to Kansas City, I knew that the purpose was to work primarily to better the Hispanic community, to help them to learn ways that they could grow and they could become self-dependent on themselves.
Gilbert Castro was the second chairman of El Centro, and he remembers the early days of El Centro and how they struggled to get things started.
The thing I most recall was Archbishop Strecker, who was the Archbishop here in Kansas City, Kansas, which pulled in all the northeast Kansas counties, and he really wanted to improve a lot of the conditions and the way of life for the Mexicanos at the time.
El Centro's board was representative of the communities that it served from the beginning by putting several Latinos in leadership roles. Teresa Pacheco was asked to be a youth representative on the board.
Yes, back in 1977, it was a lot different what it is today. But I think in 1977, the reason El Centro was founded because there wasn't any programs or services to serve the Hispanic community back in 1977. There was not one where you could go to either get educated on whatever you needed, whatever service you needed, and the elderly, you might as well just call it quits. They just didn't have anything for our Hispanic elderly at that time. You know, back when El Centro started, we were always looking at that being bilingual, especially with our Cordi Marian Sisters. Of course, that element that was needed, bilingual services for the community. Well, you know, the founders, you could say it was from Richard Reese to Father Ramon Gaitan to John Mendez to Archbishop Ignatius Strecker, Esther Wolf. All these community individuals got together and said, we need to do something about this, and let's try to put an agency together that can have comprehensive services for our Hispanics here in Kansas.
David Vega, longtime Argentine neighborhood activist, summarizes the importance of El Centro.
It's one of the best things that ever happened to our community, plus all its people. All its people, because we have no age or color barrier or anything. It's all good, especially for our kids. We got our kiddie college we have over here at 37. It used to be a great school. Now it's has a good auditorium, has a good stage, has a good basketball court, and it's a place for good, wonderful people. The director, the administrators of the school are all terrific people. The city and the county and the religious communities are all good friends of ours.
El Centro's services to the elderly were among the agency's first programs. A telephone reassurance program meant a friendly voice at the other end of the telephone for homebound elderly. The Senior Center sponsored dances and other social opportunities for seniors. The Area Agency on Aging and the United Way were early supporters of these programs from their inception. In 1985, El Centro became a United Way member agency.
The mayor of Kansas City, and I can't remember it was Mayor Hanlon or the grandfather Tom Rehorn, that was a mayor in Kansas City, Kansas, and he was very interested in the elderly. So he helped us with some of the funding and some of the support that he could, and they needed as many services. And there's one thing that the Centro would do. We would take all of the Latinos really out of isolation, because a lot of them not speaking the language, not having community, and not having any transportation, and having the breadwinner be gone for 2 or 3 jobs. So they were very isolated and in culture shock, because they had come from Mexico, from small areas, or they, had missed their family. They came from extended family, and they were used to getting their support from this extended family. Now here they were alone, and they didn't have the uncles and aunts to help them out. And so we became that bridge between them and the schools and the social services, and that's what El Centro has done so well.
One community volunteer, Jim Taylor, will never forget the story of a 91-year-old senior who relied on El Centro to make her life meaningful.
Yeah, she said how nice it was. That's the only thing she had to look forward to during the day, and if it wasn't for her, she wouldn't know she'd be sitting home doing nothing and getting ready to die, that type of thing.
In addition to services for migrant farm workers and seniors, El Centro offered a range of other programs for Hispanics during the early years, including youth programming for children of migrant parents, job development services, prison ministry, and emergency assistance for people in need.
I believe El Centro continues to be about is equality of opportunity. The Hispanic community is underserved, underrepresented, and so El Centro evolved to be the go-to agency for our community to get resources they needed access to for their families, for their welfare, be that needing some sort of assistance in looking for work, be it medical attention, just needing food for the week, navigating the various bureaucracies of city and county government. All those sort of things were provided by El Centro. And then it started to develop into kind of job skill training. Keyboards to Success was one of the first venues into workforce development, we call it today. It wasn't such a fancy term back then, but still the same purpose, was enabling individuals to get that American dream that we so much hear about.
The Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas and the United Way were both very supportive of El Centro's efforts, but the goal of its board of directors and the executive director was to become self-sufficient. Thus, they added to their mission statement, quote, "The purpose of El Centro and its subsidiaries is to create and sustain educational, social, and economic opportunities for families," unquote. Through its subsidiary endeavors, work toward financial independence. El Centro's enterprising spirit was noticeable early in the creation of a Hispanic directory and buyer's guide. This resource guide was not only the first of its kind in Kansas City, it was the first of its kind in the United States. El Centro also opened up a gift shop where it sold Mexican products. The proceeds from sales from the resource guide and the gift shop items brought in needed revenue for El Centro programs and services. El Centro's greenhouse, operated by senior citizens, was completed in 1982 at a cost of $10,823. It was adjoining the St. Thomas Building, the agency's first location in Armadale. Proceeds from the greenhouse contributed to El Centro's income.
Richard was always thinking. His mind was going 100 miles an hour. He saw the need. He would say, you know, okay, there's a need. How are we going to do it to make it right or fix it or to give them that knowledge? Or what do we need to do to bring in money? Because the day is going to come when El Centro is not going to have any grants, not going to have any corporate sponsorships. So we're going to have to be self-sufficient.
In the year 2000, the UN Marian Kaufman Foundation of Kansas City, Missouri published a report entitled Profiles in Organizational Effectiveness for Nonprofits Improving the Lives of Children, Youth, and Families in Kansas City's Urban Core, in which El Centro was cited as having the attributes of effective nonprofit organizations, which were characterized as being mission-driven, entrepreneurial, sustainable, outcomes-oriented, adaptable, and customer-focused.
What I really liked about it is that they seemed very entrepreneurial. El Centro did. And I really embrace organizations that have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Self-sufficient.
Self-sufficiency. So they ran a great program. It was for the Latino community, or for those who lived within the area. And they basically ran an apartment complex. And then one of the things I really, really like, and I've always I talk about it often, is the Promotora program. And exactly what they did for those women. And it started out small, and I think the last I knew was like about 35. They used and gave those promotoras, and predominantly women, an opportunity to go out in the community and to share and help educate people on a number of things. In this case, a lot of it was healthcare, but there was other things that these women could do. And I think I gave those women a sense of importance. The other thing I liked that they did was they then connected with, I think, Donnelly College and created this certificate that these women could receive. And they had a graduation, and I've been to a few of those graduations. And to see those women dress up and look great and be proud to receive a certificate, I mean, it's like a sense of accomplishment. And I think that's one of the things I like that El Centro does. It empowers individuals to do and give more and to become self-sufficient.
In 1986, the Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA, became federal law. This law granted amnesty for undocumented immigrants who had lived continuously in the United States since 1982. Through the generous support of the Hall Family Foundation and the Hispanic Development Fund, El Centro hired a young attorney by the name of Carlos Murguia, who would become the first Hispanic U.S. District Judge in Kansas, to assist immigrants with their immigration paperwork before the 1988 cutoff date.
One of the things I talk about a lot with organizations, and have since I left El Centro, I've done a lot of consulting with organizations about how to integrate advocacy into their work, with generous support from a lot of the healthcare foundations and other philanthropies, including many that have also supported El Centro over the years. And one of the things I talk about with those organizations is that there is absolutely risk in standing up and speaking out for social change, but there's also tremendous risk in standing on the sidelines, that decisions are going to be made that affect the people that you serve, and you're going to either be part of those conversations or not. And that's something that El Centro's founders, I think particularly Richard, understood intuitively, right? That yes, there's risk every time you're the one that stands up and says, this decision is unacceptable, or these people are part of our community and deserve to be included as such. You will, in that innovation and in that courageous response, you can be a lightning rod. You increase your risk of failure, and some things that El Centro tried to do, new locations that were started, or new program innovations, didn't always succeed, but certainly you'll attract criticism, and we experienced a lot of that, particularly as we became very vocal on some of the policy issues that we stood up on.
In 1987, El Centro began renovation on a 10,000 square foot former railroad dormitory in Argentine. With creativity and a lot of sweat equity, this well-used facility would become the agency's first land asset, its programming hub, and its first major capital renovation project, with a cost of nearly $200,000. Once the work was completed, El Centro in Argentine opened its doors to the community in 1988. In 1990, the organization celebrated a mortgage burning and owned the building free and clear.
We converted it into offices for different organizations that are for nonprofit, And
in 1989, El Centro expanded its programming for youth to offer early childhood educational programs at the Academy for Children, a bilingual educational preschool. Children and families continue to be an important part of El Centro's programming.
Probably one of the most critical needs, I believe, is children and education of children, supporting of children, and supporting of families as well. We recognize that the parts of our communities where there are families that needs the most success are those families who are economically challenged. So I think taking a look at the economical challenges of these families and addressing those economical challenges, whether those challenges relate to childcare, whether those challenges relate to assistance in tutoring and education with the children, whether it relates to helping families deal with the crises that arise, raising a family in these times, these economic times, and let's not forget the parents. I think one of the things that we've recognized and worked very hard on is strengthening the family and including dads in that strengthening as well as the moms. And I think El Centro pays attention to that, and I think that's a part of it.
My daughter was the first one to go through El Centro. She started in the pre-school program. She was there, I believe, 2 years before she started in kindergarten at Our Lady of Unity. So going through the program really helped her become a better student, I think, providing her the necessary tools to excel, as a kindergartner and then throughout her schooling. So when my daughter was going through, she did not speak. She would be fourth generation. So when she was going through the program at El Centro, she knew more Spanish than we did. She would come home and she would recite the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. There were certain prayers she knew in Spanish. So it was exciting for us to have her gain that knowledge while she was at El Centro.
So at that time, the address was actually right behind St. John the Evangelist Church, and I would go to daycare there every day, preschool, and I enjoyed my first few years before kindergarten there.
Mm-hmm.
To my recollection, we had a bilingual curriculum, different vocabulary in Spanish and English. Most definitely, some of the students obviously were bilingual themselves. I know for me personally, it really helped me solidify my bilingual language skills. Well, I do know that one of my teachers was Miss Irene Caudillo, and I still communicate with her to this day. I'm really happy that now she has such a great role in the organization.
In 1992, El Centro used its own resources to begin the Keyboards to Success program, a job skills training program which taught adults clerical, typing, computer, and 10 key skills in addition to interviewing, resume building, and job development. In 1993, the Private Industry Council provided support to continue this flagship program. Additional services such as low-interest automobile loan programs were offered to Keyboards graduates. The Keyboards to Success program was one of El Centro's first to appeal to non-Hispanic families and was developed as El Centro began to change its mission and philosophy to minister to all families in need, not just Hispanic families.
I meet people in the grocery store all the time, or at a game, or just all over the Kansas City area who've completed that program, and they will say to me, "Sister, I still have that job." Or, did you know that I went on to get my degree? The Keyboards to Success program was a springboard to jobs and to education, and I think we trained over 500, and just recently I was asked to be on jury duty, and when I went to the first day, there was one of my former keyboard students sitting there right beside me, and she is still working in the government in Kansas City, Kansas. So, they're all over the city.
El Centro's most strategic entrepreneurial endeavor was the purchase of the Woodland Hills apartment complex. It was nearly half vacant and boarded up when El Centro purchased the property in 1993. This undertaking represented an enormous challenge for a small social service agency. When the $2.3 million project was complete, El Centro had added 211 units of rental housing and a major asset to its portfolio. In 1993, El Centro became a community housing development organization, further positioning the agency to offer affordable housing to the community. When El Centro sold the property, they more than doubled their initial investment in the sale. This money allowed El Centro to create an endowment that put them in a good financial position.
And I am proud that I get to serve on the advisory board for the endowment fund. And I've been one of the charter members. I've been on it almost 10 years now. And we look at what that fund and how it was created by the sale of an apartment complex, and as stewards to ensure that that endowment is further grown and able to support additional programs that El Centro wants to operate. That's very much a desire of a lot of nonprofits out there. There's few out there that can say we have an endowment. El Centro has a very healthy endowment, and it's one that others wish they could have, but oftentimes it's just really the multi-million-dollar nonprofits that have the endowment. El Centro has one. And so with that leadership from the board, from the executive directorship, I really like the fact that El Centro really does serve as a model for other kinds of nonprofits. And oftentimes you hear individuals say, I want to start a nonprofit. And all they got to do is look at the history of El Centro and how it got started. It is not easy to start a nonprofit that's going into its 40th year.
Between 1996 and 2005, El Centro entered a new chapter of entrepreneurship. It became a community development corporation in these years and created subsidiaries, Woodland Hills Inc. and the ECI Development Corporation. Homebuyer education services began in 1996 with a donation by Brotherhood Bank and Trust and support from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Unified Government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. El Centro developed and constructed 18 new housing units at the Foxmore subdivision between 1998 and 2001. Starting in 1998, the agency rehabbed and sold existing houses in Kansas City, Kansas urban core. The unique loan program for undocumented immigrants made its first loan in 2002.
I think inclusion, the continued promotion of inclusion in programs and services for all people in walks of life that needed those services. I think the services that addressed the specific community in which El Centro started for, those same services and needs addressed other folk in the community too. And I think that attracted other folk to El Centro. I think they included that as a part of the planning process of what those services should be. As a board member, I was always proud of the fact that El Centro addressed the need of the person. Example, let's go back for a bit. It wasn't about just handing out dollars for people to buy grocery and buy clothes and that type of things, but it was providing a skill for those individuals to become sustainable in their life. Example, their class or their training through Keyboards to Success. That put a person who had limited skills or no skills in a better position to acquire a good paying job. Let's take Woodland Hills, for example, through one of the other affiliates of El Centro. That facility was a dream of El Centro's, to provide decent housing to residents of the community, housing that was decent and housing that was affordable. That wasn't just for the Hispanic American community. Other ethnic groups live in that, blacks, whites, Asians, you name it, they live there. Let's take it a step farther. We've trained you to get a better paying job. This better paying job helps you pay for a better place, affordable, decent place to live. Now let's help you figure out how to get to home ownership from that. El Centro gets involved in providing home ownership at different levels through training, and not only through that, but also through a development that provided affordable homes for their client base that they could afford, train them on how to apply for the loans, train them on how to maintain the homes, so forth and so on. And from there it goes on. And that was and is something that all citizens of the county, and then expanding, like you said, outside of the county.
In the mid-1990s, as the Hispanic population began to explode in the central core of Kansas City, Kansas, El Centro expanded its family intervention programming to where this new immigrant community was moving. With the support of the Mid-America Regional Council and the Enhanced Enterprise Community Initiative, El Centro opened North Casa Juan Diego in 1995. And when the agency outgrew that space, in 2001, the former Old Whittier Elementary School was rechristened the Macias Flores Family Center in recognition of the leadership, dedication, and loyalty of El Centro staff sister Alicia Macias and Connie Flores. Youth programming, emergency assistance, case management, job development, financial education, victim counseling, English language learning classes, GED preparation, and citizenship classes were offered at the Macias Flores Family Center. Thanks to the generosity of the Ewan Marion Kaufman Foundation, El Centro expanded its Keyboards to Success program at the agency's new downtown KCK location.
You know, at NCLR, it was there where I first got to know El Centro, because when I got there from Kansas, everybody was asking me, "Oh, you're from Kansas?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Do you know El Centro?" And I'm like, "I've heard of them, but I really don't know them." And it was funny because years later, I moved from, I still worked for NCLR, but I came to Kansas City. And when I got to Kansas City, one of the first organizations that I got to know was El Centro and Richard Reese. And I just remember, what they were doing here. And then I recalled back at NCLR how, you know, their reputation preceded themselves, the organization, everybody knew the work that they were doing. And this is on a national level. This is at Washington, D.C. at NCLR. And I got to work with Richard and El Centro as I started working on the conference, the NCLR conference, and El Centro would attend every year. Richard was on panels, so I got to really know them. But, you know, it's, first of all, 40 years, you know, that's incredible because 40 years means a couple things. One, it's a testament to your board, all the various boards, all the executive directors and CEOs, and the steadfast commitment of staff. I mean, you think about the committed staff that are day in and day out for all 40 years. You know, I can think of a lot of organizations and they come and they go. And now, you know, that I own my own company, granted we're a for-profit and El Centro's a nonprofit, you know, there is certain things about what it takes to survive, not only survive, but then thrive. And, you know, I've watched El Centro kind of broaden themselves from when I got here. It was basically they were working in Argentina and they were serving a Hispanic population. And then next thing you know, they were kind of like, hey, we're kind of moving to Johnson County a little bit. Oh, now Olathe. And now it was, you know, not just Hispanic community, it was the community. And so there was an understanding of, you know, how the broader community needs to be, they had the same needs, you know, and it was about building communities.
Andrea Pardo Spalding was one of many students assisted by El Centro's English as a Second Language program and the Students Helping Students tutoring program.
But thanks to El Centro, it was such a great resource for us coming to the United States, not knowing anybody around. And it was just a great way to be welcomed and to be helped also by El Centro. I remember when we first got here, we used to live in a little small apartment, more like an attic type of thing, and we didn't have anything. We didn't have furniture or a car. We didn't have anything, but we did have, you know, a community, and that community was in great part because of El Centro. My parents and I, after their work and after my school, we would go to learn English at El Centro, and it was just a great resource for us to start to learn the language with people that spoke Spanish and that were able to help us just feel, you know, some warmth and be part of the community.
As an undocumented high school student in Kansas, the possibility of a college education was remote. El Centro was a leading advocate for undocumented students called Dreamers.
I mean, I think we were more successful than we had hoped or than many people had feared. So a conversation that I had in late 2002, early 2003 with the state senator who was very supportive of our work, David Atkins. He's no longer in the state legislature. And he said, you know, 2004 is going to be an election year. It seems like this is a really tough time to be pushing some of these things. Of course, the terrorist attacks of September 11th were very fresh on people's minds. We'd been waging the effort around access to driver's licenses, which was never successful in our state after the September 11th attacks. And you know, maybe it would be better to wait for a while. You know, common wisdom says that it takes years and years to get any new legislation passed. And I remember coming back and having a conversation with Richard, who said, you know, it may take years, but it will take years whether we start today or tomorrow or a year from now. And so we have so much to gain from showing our families that we know they have waited too long for the opportunities they want to be able to provide their children, and we're not willing to wait any longer.
Today, Andrea works for HMN Architects as a licensed architect. After nearly 30 years of service to the community at the helm of El Centro, Richard Reese resigned as president effective August 31st, 2004. His hand-picked successor, Ian Bautista, assumed the mantle of president on September 1st, 2004. Richard Reese retains a lifetime title of President Emeritus.
El Centro is my heart, and it was practically born in my heart. And so, although I've been absent 11 years or so, when I turned it over, it was in good shape. And it was built to last. And 40 years later, it's still in business, helping the community. As long as El Centro truly understands the needs of the community. I used to think I knew. Oh, I know what they need, not to worry. That's not the case. If we're not asking, if we're not interviewing, if we're not doing focus groups, if we're not doing surveys to truly find out, that's why we got in the home building business. Because that was the number one concern, need, want, desire of especially the immigrant community. They wanted to be homeowners. And so that's why we got into business. Now you see, we didn't have to chase money because the need and the documentation and the facts were there that we could take to funders and say, I don't want what you're funding over here. I want funding for this because this is what our community wants. It's what it needs, okay? And that's how we were able to develop such a successful program.
In 2001, at the request of the Overland Park Police Department and the City of Overland Park, El Centro opened an outreach office in Johnson County to serve the needs of the growing number of Hispanic immigrants there. This marked the agency's first foray beyond its Wyandotte County roots. The expansion brought new partnerships, board members, and funding opportunities.
You know, I think today we call it sustainability, but I think I like to use think about passion. And there are individuals who really have a passion for the development of the Hispanic community so that Hispanics are contributing to the overall well-being of the entire community, or we can say the entire metro area. We can go further to the entire state of Kansas or the greater Kansas City area. And so that passion, I think, is a needed and an important foundation.
To me, El Centro serves a community that has very few opportunities to receive help. Sometimes it's a language barrier, other circumstances, and I just felt that El Centro, through their programs, and you could name one after another, that has just assisted a community that I think would otherwise, particularly in the Wyandotte County and the Johnson County areas, that otherwise really couldn't hardly find that help, whether it's income tax assistance, health issues, financial assistance. You can just go on in different programs that it just continues to serve that community that so needs that help. My exposure, of course, when Mary Lou was there, and then on to Irene as the CEO. And I just think the leadership that those two ladies have given to the organization, and then the very strong staff that's involved with the different skill levels that I see face-to-face helping people. I think that's just in that reputation that builds through the community that this is the place you can go and you'll receive sincere, talented, skilled help.
I think what we've done is kind of grow into understanding if we can help dual language children at an early age understand the asset of keeping their primary language, whether it's Spanish or English, has nothing to do with their citizenship. But they're in homes where Spanish is the home language, where we can help the parents understand maintaining that dual language, that we can also then work with families to be able to help with their health care needs, their chronic illness needs, their getting through navigating this healthcare system that is so difficult, but also being able to form a foundation. What we think is where the foundation always needs to be is that how do we help our community with asset building and building their assets by owning a home, by helping them save, whether it's retirement, their college, helping them save for citizenship. That they understand, if we can understand that, have families understand that foundation, which hasn't changed from the vision of the founders, but it really has created an opportunity for us to have home buyers, regardless of their status, meaning they're residents in the home that have a home and are paying for it through banks that we work with, that also are healthy, regardless of their status, regardless of their low income, that they're able to get the health care needs that they have, and that they're really being guided by families that trust and could work within the community to help support a positive business, a well-maintained home, great kids, and a growth a growth in our population that we still continue to see today.
El Centro was recognized in 1996 as one of the best of Wyandotte County. The agency received 3 Ewan Marion Kaufman Foundation Reach Awards in the categories of sustainability, entrepreneurialism, and adaptability in 2000, 2001, and 2002. El Centro was inducted in 2002 into the Mid-America Educational Hall of Fame and was the 2003 national winner of the National Council of La Raza's Affiliate Advocate Award. El Centro was the 2005 National Council of La Raza Annie E. Casey Foundation Family Straightening Award winner in the category of Community Development. These recognitions honor the efforts of board and staff to better the community they serve.
So I would just say that our persistence and our continued, I think, success in this community comes with the fact that we know our community, we respect and embrace and value what our community brings, and we very much on a regular basis advocate for those needs and continue to make sure that we are at the right tables and we are valued for what we have brought to our community, what we have, what we've built for this community, and that it's recognized as our community as well.
El Centro doesn't do this work in an island. So it becomes a responsibility of everybody in our community that recognizes that the work of El Centro goes beyond what I am capable of doing at this foundation. It goes beyond what I'm capable of doing as a director of any other nonprofit in Kansas City. It becomes critical for us to be able to say, how can we connect with El Centro and what El Centro is doing? How do we connect it with the greater connectivity of what's happening in Kansas City? And that's, in my opinion, where you start to see El Centro becoming an agency, already is an agency, that is sought to for other kinds of issues beyond just the Latino issue, but because they're a sustainable nonprofit that addresses a greater, larger need that exists in our community. And it's an example of the kind of nonprofits that we need across Kansas City. One that has an effective board, one that has, when you think about organizations, and when you think about its executive leadership, you look at what El Centro has had in the past, stability, which is core to any nonprofit. They had Richard Reese, they had Mary Lou Jaramillo, they have Irene Cadillo, and Ian Batista for a while there. So you had these 4 individuals who were from the community, which is a very important part of when you think of organizations and what they do, is that they had people from the community who played a role in other kinds of things that they did, and then come to El Centro and bring those years of experience to help further the mission and the vision of what the program does, and I should say the programs do for community, because there are so many people who can say, oh, yes, I went to El Centro's home buyer class. Oh, yes, I went to El Centro's English program. Or my child was at their early education center. So everybody somewhere in this city, you can always find some connection of how El Centro has played a role in helping to change their lives.
The purpose of El Centro and its subsidiaries is to create and sustain educational, social, and economic opportunities for families. Today, El Centro continues to carry out that mission through the various programs it sponsors. Its Academy for Children continues to give children and their families a jumpstart for their future educational development. Its Health Navigation program serves both Wyandotte and Johnson counties, helping families resolve billing issues, arrange surgeries, access specialty care, enroll in health insurance, and much more. The Promotoras de Salud program promotes healthy living through grocery store and farmer market visits, healthy cooking lessons, budgeting family food dollars, and helping them understand the supplemental nutrition program. All of this is done in a culturally and linguistically relevant way. The Economic Empowerment Program provides emergency financial assistance to families while they attend individual financial counseling, classroom-style courses, or self-paced online financial education courses. So what will the future bring for El Centro? In the words of Irene Salazar Caudillo, President and CEO, we not only look back on what has happened over the past 40 years at El Centro, but more importantly, we are looking forward to the next 40 years and beyond. El Centro prides itself as the vanguard of anticipating needs and working to meet those needs.
I think in many ways, the very things that began El Centro, we still see today as we've had new waves of immigrants who come with additional needs. But we also have seen a maturing of the Latino, of the Hispanic community here. And so I think with that, I think comes more potential. We have now generations of Hispanics in the Kansas City community that have become very successful and are leaders within the community today. But we still have these waves of immigrants that I think still have a lot of those same needs of how do they enculturate, how do they find the support they need and protect, particularly until we solve the immigration problem. And our laws, I think everyone acknowledges it's a broken system. I think El Centro is going to play a key role on how we assist both those that are here with legal documents and those that are not. Well, I would congratulate them on a job well done, and I think anniversaries are always times to look back at our history, and I think that they can be very proud and very gratified at that history, but it's also a time to recommit to the mission. And I think, so for the current board and current leadership, it's a moment to celebrate the great tradition of El Centro, but to recommit to that mission of helping people and helping particularly the Hispanic community in our area to grow and to thrive, and with a special outreach to those that are struggling.
I would say that the work that was begun 40 years ago is not over. Take a moment to enjoy the successes, because there have been many, and continue to assess and evaluate, project forward what needs to happen. Many thanks for all you do. Many thanks for all you've given to the staff and to the donors. And just know that it's not over yet. There's still more work to be done.
I would like to thank the founders, the leadership, for your vision, for helping make El Centro be all that it has become in Kansas City, and especially Olathe. It has improved our community, and Thank you for that. I know that many of those involved have many other opportunities to invest their time, their talents, and their energy, but they have chosen El Centro. They have chosen to help people in this very, very important, impactful way. And on behalf of my city council, and the 136,000 people that call Olathe home, thank you. Thank you for doing that. You know, Olathe has a rich history, almost 160 years old, and it's a community as a country built by immigrants, and that has been a part of the fabric of this community since its founding. And it's so nice to have trusted partners who have the same focus on excellence and quality in their service delivery and helping others. And God bless you for your efforts, and our community is better off for it. Happy birthday.
Well, as proud as we are of your last 40 years and as appreciative as we are of all that you've done, we really want to focus on the next 40 years because your work is just beginning. It's as important as ever to make sure that everyone in our community feels at home, has that safety net and the social services that they need, and the opportunity to go somewhere when they need help. And so El Centro's vision has been very powerful in the past and is only going to continue to be more powerful in the future. So if I could just say one thing to El Centro, I would say Feliz 40, Felicitaciones.
En Kansas y otro lugar aprendemos a luchar. Luchar es aprender. Aprendemos a luchar, porque luchar es aprender.